Okay, next up is, I believe, Nazek. I'm trying to find my schedule here. Yes,
Yep.
Nazek, you are up.
All right, I'll be sharing my screen. Please let me know if you can see what I'm sharing right now. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
From the beginning, and can you see it in presentation mode?
Yes.
All right, awesome. So, hi, my name is Nazek Queder. I am located in the beautiful Golden State, California. I mainly come from neurobiology background, but I also grew passion for brain imaging and data science early in my career. I am currently a research specialist at the Queder Lab in the Department of Psychiatry and Human Behavior at UC Irvine, working on the NIDM terms project, which you'll be learning more about by the end of this training session. I work on the development of the controlled neuroimaging terminologies, as well as the tools development side of the project. And I'll be talking about those in my session. So to start, I'll quickly go over the topics I'll be covering. I will be talking about the NIDM terms GitHub repository, as well as the term properties that we have in NIDM terms. I'll be explaining the difference between data elements and concepts, giving some examples about personal data elements, common data elements, and concepts. And lastly, I'll be presenting the JavaScript user interface that we've been working on that allows interaction with the terms that we're currently developing. So in IDM terms, we host the terms on GitHub, the terms and the tools on GitHub. And so our NIDM terms GitHub repository consists of JSON LD representations of the curated terms, and they're organized by community names. And so those terms have been extracted from different neuroimaging communities like the BITS community. And if you see here on the slide, to the left side, it's just the directories. They're named after each community, and each directory consists of a single JSON LD file for every term. And on the right side is the JSON LD representation of one of the BITS terms with the associated properties, which we'll go over in the next slide. So the term properties that we have in IDM terms, here are a few of them, but we have more in our repository, GitHub repository. So the first property is description. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's an explanation of the nature and the scope of the new terms. Label and source variables are used to contain the name of the term, and is about property is a property that we use to link the terms to broader concepts or higher level terms, and is part of, for example, links data elements to assessments. And we also include some more lower level descriptive properties like choices, value types, ranges, like minimum and maximum values. Choices is similar to the levels property in BITS. So the difference between data elements and concepts, those are the two, well, actually three different types of terms. So we have personal data elements, which are terms that are defined within an experiment, and common data elements are terms that are defined within a community of curators, like the BIT specification terms, and they could also take standardized units, ranges, etc. And concepts, on the other hand, they're higher level terms or higher level abstraction of data elements, and they're typically used to query across data sets. We'll go over some examples right now. So let's start with the personal data elements, or PDEs. They're, as I mentioned, study variables that are defined within an experiment, and they're typically associated with higher level concepts. For example, the JSON LD representation on the right side of the screen, the source variable or the term is any annex _f. So now without the associated properties or descriptive information, I wouldn't be able to tell what that term is about. But based on the description, I'm able to tell that it's about generalized anxiety disorder. I also have some choices, minimum and maximum values. I know that this term takes a value of integer, and through the is about property, it's associated with the concept of anxiety and generalized anxiety disorder. The other term type is a common data element, which is similar to personal data element, but those terms are more common, telling by the name of the type, but they're defined by community of curators, like the bit specification or the bits community, and they're linked to other terminologies. So in the bit specification case, the bits terms are linked to DICOM terms and NIDM terms. And this is an example of a common data element on the right side. And the third type is concept. So concept are, as I mentioned, broad, high-level terms, and they're used to query across data sets. They're mainly associated with PDs. They could be associated with CDs, but they're mainly associated with personal data elements to give them conceptual meaning. The concepts that we have in IDM terms mainly come from interlex, which is our information source, and cognitive atlas. On the right side of the screen, we have the concept of age. So this is an example of one of the concepts that we're using to associate with data sets. Concepts typically only use description and label. So they're more of a higher level data elements. And in some cases, they could take a parent term. In this case, in the supertype CD property, this term, I mean, if I click on the link, it'll take me to the concept of time, which makes sense because age is about the time quality, as it mentions here in the description. So we annotated multiple data sets with concepts. We annotated data sets like the Open Neuro data sets, Abide ADHD 200, and we maintained a registry of the used concepts with the use frequency, and we are encouraging researchers to use those concepts when they're annotating their own data sets to improve the querying across data sets. And we are developing a term viewer user interface using JavaScript. It's backed by GitHub. This UI allows the neuroimaging community to interact with the NIDM terms, the developed terms, browse the terms, search for them. It also allows the neuroimaging community to add terms and new communities to NIDM terms, as well as export existing terms in various formats like Markdown table, JSON LD, NQuads, and so on and so forth. So let's take a look at the UI. I'm hoping that everyone can still see my screen and see the UI. So
yes, we can see it.
Awesome. Here under available terms, the terms are organized by communities. If I uncheck any of those communities, let's take a look at the bit specification terms, for example. This is the list of all of the bit specification terms. The terms are displayed in a tree view. If you expand it, it includes all of the descriptive properties for each of those terms. It also tells you the type of the term, which is a data element, and it tells you which community it comes from. You can also search for terms using this search bar right here. And you can look at multiple communities at a time. For suggest terms allows you to suggest new terms to a certain community by including your GitHub access token, selecting the community name, and filling out some information about that term. When you click send a pull request, what the tool does is that it sends a pull request to our GitHub repository. Then a discussion around the term would happen by the neuroimaging community, and they add it or add other properties to the term and merge it to the community. Under export terms, you can build your own files. You can select file formats, select properties, and let's try it. Select JSON-LD, and you can select terms from a certain community. And when you hit export, a JSON-LD file should be downloaded to your local machine. Similar to suggesting terms, you can also suggest new communities, which will end up in a pull request in our GitHub repository. You can enter your GitHub access token. You can enter the name of the new community, a description, some descriptive information about the first term. Once that community is merged, you can go to suggest terms and add more terms to your community. And in the about section right here, which is still work in progress, but we're working on some documentation to just explain the UI and its functionality. And so, yeah, if you're interested in adding your own community to NIDM terms, or even help us test the tool, please email me at nqueder@uci.edu. I also left my GitHub right here, just in case. And here are some resources to NIDM terms, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Nazek. Yeah, so I think it's useful and would be, like Nazek said, we're interested in having users try out the interface. Even if you want to manage terminologies for your lab for a specific study, you can try that as a new community. Also, another thing that I can mention is if you're GitHub savvy, you essentially can clone the repo or fork our NIDM terms repo, and some other folks have tried this, and bulk load your terms for your terminology as JSON-LD files into your fork, and then merge or send a pull request from there. So you can get basically a lot of terms in more quickly than using the graphical user interface. But we'd like to have folks try this out and provide us feedback, and so we can improve the tool. And this is very important for us, and for when you look at annotated BIDS data sets or NIDM files, that the terms are web accessible and somewhere people can find them. And specifically for the BIDS specification, we found prior to this work that you would have to go into these BIDS manuals to figure out what the terms meant that you might find in a BIDS data set. So this provides I think an easier interface to find that information.